but technology has come so far. So we're gonna give it like 5 more minutes, guys, and see what happens here today. Yeah, don't close that door yet. Invite people in. Tell them join us. Oh no, keep the door open for a minute or 2 more. How's everybody's con? How you doing? Yeah? Is anybody with us? Is this anybody's 3rd year with me? Yes. With me doing all ages things. Good. Glad. We've come a real long way. It's been a wild time. I'm Shannon, by the way, guys. I am the senior editor of KaBOOM and Boombox at Boom Studios. So I do all the all ages stuff and also the weird stuff. Sometimes they're one and the same. That's when we were really lucky. And I apologize for my voice, guys. I think I'm getting a little case of the con crud, which is too bad. Or maybe I just sang One Direction too loudly at karaoke last night.
Don't stress your voice. I can turn your mic up if you have to.
Thank you, dear. This is very snazzy. There were several One Direction songs that were performed last night at karaoke, Mike. Well, do any of you know who Noelle Stevenson is? She's Ginger Hayes on Tumblr, and she writes a little book with us called Lumberjanes. We sang a Story of My Life duet that'll go down in history. And then Zach Sterling, the artist on Kate Leth's OGN, and I. What did we sing? Which one did we sing? I forget. There was another One Direction song, and I sang Kiss You. It was a pretty good night, as you can imagine. Yeah. I'm just waiting. I'm seeing if there's any more. I'm giving it 5 minutes. Because it just turned 1, so I'm giving it a minute, just in case. And this can be a discussion of last night's Boom karaoke, if that's what everybody wants. But maybe some of you might prefer to actually enjoy the panel that you came here to see. Thank you for your patience while we kind of wait for it just struck 1, so we're going to give it a minute or 2 more and just make sure that we have folk. Have any of you visited the Boom booth yet on the Sky Bridge this con? Yeah? What do you guys think of it? Pretty snazzy, huh? Brand new. It's this, we have a little secret room in the middle now, which is very exciting for everyone who wants to not, be out in the hustle and bustle for a moment. But it feels very high class. I feel very classy when I'm sitting in the secret room. We've got expedit shelves in there. It's like a little apartment. It's very odd. All right. If you're just walking in, please come up to the front. Come up here, since we're being a little family. All right, door's closed, so we are going to get started. I am Shannon. Like I said, I'm Shannon Watters, and I'm the senior editor of KaBOOM and Boombox at Boom Studios. And we've got a really cool group of panelists here today. This is kind of just going to be a roundtable discussion about all ages comics and why all ages comics, and just a general kind of fun discussion. Hopefully, with a small group like this, I'd love, to do a question and answer and kind of, anything you guys have wanted to know about getting into comics, all ages comics, making all ages comics, what it's like to work on certain things, etc. We want to know. We want to talk about it. Let's have some fun here today. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves and tell you what they do.
My name is Mike Kunkel, and I do a book called Hero Bearing the Kid, which is an all-ages book, very much along the lines of Wonder Years and Stand By Me and Calvin Hobbes.
It's really awesome, if you guys haven't checked it out. They're all awesome.
Dabble in childhood and just tell very nostalgic stories with it. And so, very good home for it, and I'm enjoying it there. So I do that, and I do children's picture books and things like that, and also work in animation with them for 25 years. So that's my life in a nutshell.
Hi, I'm Colleen Coover. KaBOOM, my husband Paul and I have been co-writing an Adventure Time story called The Flip Side. And we also create a book called Vendette, which is pretty much all ages, although we don't really define it that way because it depends on who you play for, I guess. I work with you. And we've got other stuff together. I've worked in all ages comics for Marvel Comics, and we've done a series called Banana Sunday for Omnibus together called Yes, okay. I'm a little tired.
It's a great name for a club.
It really is, and it actually,
I'm in on that.
it's kind of exactly what it sounds like too. It was about monkeys.
I'm going to stop and let you start talking now.
Colleen and I do Bandit, which is an all ages. I do consider it an all ages thing, but when I say all ages, I always mean all ages. Some people define all ages as like this weird. It's all ages, and that means like anywhere from 1 to 8, and I don't like that. I think it should be inclusive of all ages. And I tried to do that when I was running.
Oh yeah, hey.
Yeah.
Live mics.
We're gonna talk a little bit about that, Paul. I'm excited about it.
I used to write pretty much the whole line of Marvel Adventures for Marvel Comics, and when I was writing those, I really did try to, like, if you were 70 years old, you could enjoy them, and if you were like 5 years old. And I have to say that when I write all ages books, I try to write them for myself, because that's the love for it. So the Marvel Adventure stuff I've done, we're co-writing the Adventure Time, Bandette. I also write Plants vs. Zombies, Angry Birds.
Nice.
I think that's it for the all ages stuff. I have a lot of other projects as well, a horror series, Colder. I think it's important to write a whole broad range of things.
I'm Kate Leth. I do sometimes a webcomic called Kate or Die, which is sort of how I got into doing comics. Right now I work for Boom on like 17 different projects. Literally true. I just wrote, just came out a book called Seeing Red for Adventure Time, which is all about Marceline. I've written a second one that's coming out in the fall, and I'm going to be on a bunch of different projects with them coming up in the year, none of which have really been announced yet, but they're going to be great.
They're gonna be super swell.
They're going to be so great. So yeah, I kind of like accidentally fell into the world of all ages comics because the stuff that I did was a lot more adult, and I really like it, and I'm having a super great time. Boom is awesome about the things that they do, and I kind of wanted to write, especially because I work in a comic book store, and there's not a lot of stuff for like girls between the ages of like 5 and 14, especially. So I really like making that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I'm Ryan North, and I write the Adventure Time series, and I do an online comic called Dinosaur Comics, and I have a new series through the Boombox imprint called Midas Flesh, which is about King Midas in space with dinosaurs. That's the pitch.
It's the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Try to avoid buying it now.
I don't think my thing is. Hi, I'm Madeline Rupert. I have a webcomic called Sakana, and I also write and draw the regular show Skips miniseries, and I will be soon working on a, I think, unannounced Adventure Time series, just as the artist, though. But I did write the Skips, so that's why I'm here.
Skips is really great. If you guys haven't read the regular show Skips miniseries,
It's got time cops.
it's basically got time cops. Skips and the gang, they're all going on vacation. Mordecai and Rigby and Benson and Skips, and Mordecai and Rigby keep like blowing up the world. And so time resets. So it's like Groundhog Day essentially, except Skips is the one that's caught in the Groundhog Day, and he's really upset about it. And it's really, really well written and really funny, and Matt does an incredible job. with it. So you should check out all of these amazing projects that our panelists do because they're very, very talented. Paul kind of touched on it, but I kind of wanted to talk about the term all ages. It's interesting. Marina is an incredibly talented writer and artist, and she was on this panel with me in San Diego, and she had recently expressed her dislike for the term all ages. And I thought that was really interesting because I love the term all ages. But her argument was a little bit like we should be, really proud to call our books, for kids or for teens, et cetera. And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit to this panel about the term all ages and whether you like it or don't like it and why. Because I love it because of exactly what Paul was talking about, for all ages. So, you were talking, your series, like you said, you compared it to stuff like Calvin and Hobbes, where it really is for everyone. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit.
I think, Paul, you're hitting right on exactly what I believe and what I feel is that the term all ages, I think we live too much in film and media and where everybody's trying to lock everything down to a certain demographic, or this is only for that group or that. You write it for yourself. It's like old Warner Brothers cartoons. When Chuck and them would do those cartoons, they did it because it made them laugh. And when we watched them as kids, we laughed at what they're doing. As we got older, we laughed at what they said and what it was about. So it really did play on an all ages category. I've always defined, and the heavens say no. That I call it a family event, and that defines all ages to me. Is that parents read the book with their kids, teachers read it with their kids, aunts and uncles, grandparents. There are groups that read it together, and that defines the all ages. And I like that because you can get more out of it if it's not specifically written to that group. It's written for everybody.
Right. And one of the things that I've liked about working on properties like Adventure Time is that I've always liked stuff that is sort of entertainment for grown-ups that are in disguise as entertainment for children, because then it can exist on so many different levels. Those levels can be discovered, like you say, the Warner Brothers cartoons. They are discovered as you grow older, and I guess I have the luxury of not having children of my own, so I have to worry about raising them right or whatever. But I've always felt like if you put kids into a box of, well, this is appropriate for this age, and we can't go out of that appropriate box, then they aren't being challenged to think about what they're reading and grow and think.
I think it really does like a disservice almost to, I don't know, to put kids in that box, and I think it kind of condescends to them a little bit, and that's like the worst thing you can do when you're making media for kids, is be condescending.
Yeah, I agree with what I always wanted to read above my age group, and the subversive stuff was, I always wanted to feel like I was uncovering something, and so I think it's important to do that. And what Mike was talking about with the, if you're creating something and you know it's going to be written or read by 5-year-olds, and you go, well, what would make a 5-year-old laugh? I think you've already failed. I think you always need to approach a project with what will make me laugh, what will entertain me, because the enjoyment of creation is what I think transcends age groups. As long as the creator is having fun, as long as the creator is engaged, then I think the readers are engaged. And I can always tell when I read something or watch those Warner Brothers cartoons and things like that. You can step back and say, these guys, they enjoyed making this, and that love comes through. And so I think no matter what age group you're writing for, I think that as long as you're writing for yourself, inclusive of that group, you're doing well. And I like the term all ages, but I don't like what it's become in some other people's heads. So but I can't come up with a better term.
I know,
So,
it's really difficult.
it's
It's
like-
really interesting because I will tell people, like, I do all ages comics, but then people kind of give me a side eye, and I'm like, oh, I do the kids stuff.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that's so simplistic, I don't know.
Yeah, so many times I've talked about, like, well, this book is all ages, and somebody will say, oh, you write anything for my age group? And it's like, are you not in all ages? Because,
Well, and it's so interesting because you were talking about how Bernadette, you know, is an all ages, like it is a comic for everybody. Like it could be read by anybody and enjoyed by anybody. You know, there's a comic at Boombox called Lumberjanes that's similar. You know, it is an all ages comic that's not necessarily put in that all ages box. And I don't know, it's really interesting, like why not? It's an all ages book, but also there's certain connotations that come along with that
as
too.
long as you're not, like, dumbing down, because that's,
Yeah.
like you say, the condescension of dumbing something down. It's like, well, they won't understand this, so I won't put that in.
Kids are so smart.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better way to discourage a child from reading than to
Say, yeah.
write down
Yeah.
their
Oh, God.
assumed level.
Kids are so smart. I freaking love kids. Anyway, kids are the best. Go for it, Kate.
That's okay. I think coming into this, like, I work in a comic book store too. I do every job in comics. And you know, the all ages section is a really tricky thing because, you know, people do think of it as being the kids stuff. And it's like when Midas Flesh came out and my boss was like, where do we put this? I'm like, well, it's for everybody. Like, and he's like, is it for children? I'm like, yeah, it's for everybody. And we're like, okay, well, it can't go with Batman and it can't go with Powerpuff Girls. And it's like, just put it in both places. Because now it's in both places.
Yeah.
So I think whenever I come to these projects, my watermark or the thing that I always look at is a Marvel book called Thor: The Mighty Avenger, which is like, I think there you go, yeah, it's amazing. Like the definition of an all ages comic, because I could give it to a 5-year-old, I could give it to a 30-year-old, and there's so much you can get for it. It's friendly to everybody. It's really fun. Like it's got fun jokes for kids, and then there's like a lot of things that a kid maybe wouldn't pick up on or whatever. And it's smart and it's sweet and it's got a lot of heart. So that's the thing that I always think about and what I like to do, because I mean, writing for Adventure Time, and that show is episode to episode even is a completely different audience almost. Well, everybody's watching it, but like it can be aimed at so many different levels. So if you're watching a lot of it at a time, you're getting a lot of different things out of it. So even within the context of a book, you can play with that. So I think I like the idea of all ages comics. I do think there's a stigma around it of it being like lesser than real comics, which is silly.
Nonsense.
Because there should be more. There should be more. There's not enough stuff that you can actually give to kids and younger teens, you know, right now that anybody would read. So yeah.
I agree with Kate. The thing with Adventure Time is that it is this world that, if you look at it, there's some pretty dark stuff
Yeah, it's a little
there.
dark.
It's post-apocalyptic. I love Ice King. He's got some troubles in his life, and for me, when I'm writing something like Adventure Time, for all ages stuff, I would just, like was being said, you write it for yourself, and I just make sure that everyone keeps their clothes on and nobody swears, and that's all you need
That's
to
it.
do to make it all ages.
That's it.
And like there's an arc with Ice King, and it was talking about how sad he can get, and yeah, like it's really about respecting your audience and writing for yourself and characters keeping their clothes on, and then you've got all ages comics. That's the secret,
Yep.
in my opinion.
That pretty much is the recipe.
Yeah. No cussing or no cussing.
No cussing.
No cussing.
So yeah, I think that regular show and Adventure Time have a lot of things in common in that regard. I would say that probably Adventure Time gets a little bit deeper than regular show on a regular basis. But because for me, the way that I approached regular show was that it's kind of like Beavis and Butthead light, Ren and Stimpy sort of thing. And like a lot of people...
It is. It's very it's
Yeah,
like slapsticky
yeah,
kind
so
of.
it's a lot of people who are my age and maybe a little bit older than me remember like watching Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy and things like that. And so I think a lot of people who are older than like, you know, the younger kids that enjoy regular show, we also get an older crowd in there too who has that sort of nostalgia for that kind of thing and enjoys kind of going back to that kind of thing. And and you have the people in the middle who are like high school and college age, who, you know, it's funny, like butt humor and stuff like that, and it's like lots of poop jokes and stuff. And then the little kids, who of course also like poop jokes, and like, you
Who
know,
doesn't?
the funny slapstick stuff, and especially with regular show, I also, you know, write it to kind of indulge myself, and it's like, what do I want to write and draw and read about? I want to write and draw and read about, I like the movie Groundhog Day, and I like giant monsters that pop out of the ground and destroy everything. So that's what I'm going to write about, and I think a lot of people respond to that in all ages. I think that's universally appreciated.
So why all ages for all of you? You could be out there writing gritty anti-heroes, cussing and taking their clothes off. Why?
That's upsetting.
No one says we're not.
We could.
Well, and
Sure
here's
we
the
could.
thing. Yeah, I was gonna say that's like, and that's the interesting thing. You know, you guys don't do exclusively all ages comics, but what is the appeal of all ages comics? What is, I mean, besides the obvious of what we just talked about, I guess. Like you personally, why do you do all ages comics?
I like
Besides, it's fun.
there's no besides it's fun to me.
Yeah.
That's the reason I do it.
Yeah.
And I try to key in on how I felt when I was a kid and how I still often feel, of like that sense of adventure and that sense of not knowing what's next. And I, you know, that to me was key. Like adventure tries to work its way into all my books, and the kids' books, I think you can go, or the all ages books, I think you can go a little more towards the sense of the absurd. And I'm really drawn to the absurd. So enjoy, yeah, just the pure expression of it's fun.
And I think that's why a lot of like adults respond positively to the all ages stuff, is because they've been sort of told for the last like 20 years that comics are about fighting and being sad, or
Being real sad and real
angry
mad.
and upset and conflict and tension and all this, and when you present them with something where someone in a comic book is having fun, they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And I think that's why we all see a lot of adults coming and saying, this is such a relief, or this is just so refreshing, because I haven't been getting that for me or for my kids, and that's why it's so important. But on the other hand, it's like you're writing this creepy horror comic holder that's not
Also super fun in its own way.
But it's not like you have a different brain when you're writing one thing or the other. It's
Right,
you're
I mean, it's like,
exploring different topics.
it's the fun of like whenever anybody says like, what's your top 3 favorite comic books? And I could tell you and be completely honest about it. And if you asked me an hour from then, it would be completely different, because we all have different moods during the day, and I think it's important to work in different avenues, because we are different people at different times and have different things appeal to us.
Well, I think that's, I don't know, I try to, when I'm having people do stories and stuff in Adventure Time and regular show, I try to really hire people who do a lot of different personal stuff, like do a lot of different varied personal comics, because when I was a kid and a teenager, when I was a teenager, I remember reading Hero Bear, in fact. It was a favorite of mine.
It wasn't that long ago.
Shannon's like 14.
Yeah, I'm super.
Just a couple years ago.
Other comics that were, that were done by folks who did a lot of other things, and it kind of led me to, the ads in the back of that book led me to this book or that book. The artists that worked on this book led me to this person's work and stuff like that. And I really think that's important, I don't know, for kids and readers in general, is to, for people to...
I think, for me, what I like about all ages books for doing it, and I think when they work the best is it is something I can hand to anybody. And whereas a specific kids book, if we were to go down that, I can only give that to kids. I would give it to parents to give to kids. But I think when an all ages book hits on all cylinders and it works, it is the one genre that actually is better than any other comic out there, because you can hand it to anybody in there. I've had people come up, even this con again, I'm buying this for my grandma because she loves books. I'm buying this for my classroom. I'm buying this for my you know, I'm now shopped for my own stuff. I need to get something for my son or daughter, so I bring something home for them when I go home. And it's all this variety of, I feel completely comfortable that with my all ages book, I can hand it to any person that walks up. And they will enjoy it on their levels. And then when we do the other stuff, we know that that's geared for, now our scope and our vision has zero pointed in on like a laser, that now it's for that group.
I think it changed a lot for me when I started doing this stuff too, and it's a total dream to work on. Adventure Time is like the most fun thing to write in the world, because you can do anything, and the characters are so different, and there's so many different characters, and you know, I mean, the one that I did is very like, I mean, it's got crazy battles and demons and stuff, but it's also like very much a quiet, personal, sad story about, you know, a parent and a child having an awkward relationship and trying to deal with that. And you can do that in that world, which is really fun, and you can do that in all ages comics. And I think about a lot now, like 2 years ago, one of my first conventions, I had my own comic, which is like autobiographical, and it's not child friendly. And I was at a table, and all these kids would come up because I have a very cartoony drawing style, and they would pick it up, and I'd have to take it away from them and be like, you can't read that. And that was really sad for me, and I realized it more as the shows went on, where I was like, it would be so cool to be able to have something to give to everybody. And now when I'm there with like the Marceline book and things like that, and the other covers that I've done, and I can give it to kids and sign and draw Marceline for them, and it's so exciting. And that feeling is like nothing else. And kids give me art. There's no better thing in the world than when kids give you art. I have a wall. It's so great. So I think that became really important to me, because I wanted to create things that I would have wanted when I was younger. Because I was an avid reader and a comic reader as a kid. And even now, like, you hit a point with modern stuff where like you'll run out. Like you go through Amulet, and you go through Bone, and a lot of those series, and eventually there's not that much left. You know, there's so much Batman. There's endless Batman. But some of those things, it's harder. So I love now that I can be creating and filling that niche and making more stuff out there that anybody can read. So it's awesome.
I had a similar experience where I wrote a book called The Happy Dog, that sounds like it's a book for kids, but it wasn't. And it had really cute like pencil crayon drawings, and it was about this dog, but every second page had this terrible life lesson, like your body will betray you as you age. And when you grow up, your parents may reject your sexuality. These downers every second page, and like, he liked to play fetch in the woods. So many bad things can happen in the dark. And so kids would come up and flip through, and I'd be like, nope. And then one time this mom came up, she says, I'm looking for books for my kids. They're 6 and 8. And I said, well, move along, lady. And she grabbed Happy Dog, and she read the whole book at the table. It was only like 20 pages. And she was like, why would I not buy this for my kids? And bought 2 copies. And I was like, well, I'm glad that worked once. But yeah, it's nice to something that you can show people and know that you're not going to have to leave the room while they read it, and things like that. Not that everything I write is so horribly graphic and adult, but you know, it's not usually my role to tell kids that some of your parents might be bigoted. That's something they get to trip over on their own. When
I had like an 11-year-old girl once tell me she really loved like my web comics. I'm like, you should not be allowed. Please don't read my Marceline book and then go find my other things.
But that's the thing, though. Like when you were a kid, you know, watching
I
Jurassic
would've
Park
read it.
or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, you're 3rd grade watching Jurassic Park. You're like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I'm also afraid that there are raptors in my shower.
Or if you go back and watch SpongeBob now, and you're like, how are kids allowed to watch this?
Yeah. Which,
Or even actual children's books like Shel Silverstein.
yeah.
I mean, I was, you know, I'm listening and you tell us about Happy Dog, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a Shel Silverstein book. That sounds delightful.
That's actually.
But it is, like, I feel like that is important, too. Like, I don't know, is that, again, it goes back to that idea of not talking down to kids when you're writing for them. Challenging kids is different than, you know, making something, I don't know, that's
And-
inappropriate for kids.
And exploring those disappointments that you
Yeah.
went through growing up, like in The Missing Piece or
Yeah.
Happy Dog, the Happy Dog.
Happy dog, the happy dog.
I
Well,
love reading Happy Dog.
it's funny, this morning, this girl came up to buy Lumberjanes. For those, Lumberjanes is the new series from Boombox, and it's done by Noelle Stevenson and Grace Ellis and Brooke Allen. And it's 5 best friends, and they're at Lumberjane Scout Camp. And weird things start to happen, and they have to fight monsters, but they're up for it. Like, it's pretty cool. You know, you're 13, you're excited about adventure. And it's really interesting because one of the characters throughout, you know, they essentially get caught. They get caught sneaking out to fight monsters. Who doesn't know that experience? But the one of the kids, after they get caught, you know, they're walking back, and their counselor is, you know, ragging on them, saying, "Oh, you just wait till the lumber master like throws you out of camp," you know. And this one girl's like, very small voice, just like, "Are you gonna call my parents? Are you gonna call my parents? Are you gonna call my parents?" And it's kind of a throwaway, but it's also, there's also this deeper thing that comes from one of the writer's kind of own personal experiences. And this girl came up, and she goes like, and she asked about Molly, who's the character that was so freaked out about her parents being told. And she's like, Molly's really like freaked out about her parents finding out that she got in trouble. And Grace is like, yeah. She's like, I feel like that sounds like me all the time. But it was like this kind of sad, sweet way of that she, and it was just like really, it was kind of, it's like, it's essential obviously to Molly's character, but it was also kind of like a throwaway that not everybody would really think about. But for this girl, it was her favorite part of the book was that this kid essentially was afraid of her parents getting told, afraid of getting sent home back to that place. And you don't know why yet, but, you know, I thought that was really interesting just from a experience that you wouldn't get if you were writing Batman number 327, maybe. I don't know.
But I think that is a good thing about all ages books is to present something to an audience that they relate to, rather than something that, you know, could be inappropriate. So that's kind of where you define that line, is that I'm going to present you stories that somehow feel familiar. Even in, you know, we keep relating to cartoons. We don't have a problem calling those all ages or anything, you know, SpongeBob and Adventure Time. But truly, when you do look at SpongeBob and Patrick, they really are 2 little 9-year-olds running around getting in trouble. And the adventures that they get into, we can go, I relate to that. I did that. I ran that. And not maybe underwater and with a pineapple, but I know that adventure. I did run away. I did try and go do that. I did sneak out at 13. I did have that. I did get in trouble. So the aspect of all ages is I'm going to present you with things that are familiar of childhood in all ages that you'll enjoy.
And it's, somebody asked me, I was on a panel a while back, and they asked who we make comics for. Everybody had these beautiful, grandiose answers about how they make comics for everybody. And I was like, yeah, me too, I make comics for everybody. But actually, I kind of make comics for my 13-year-old self, I'm sorry. But in doing so, I think I am making comics for everybody, you know? It's that, you know, you're making comics for, I don't know, the person, that you're making the comics that you wanted to see when you were a kid a little bit. And that's, if you're looking at it that way, you're not talking down to them, you know?
For my company that I had when I published Hero Bear and I do my other books, it's the Astonish Factory, but our tag for it, for all ages, is remember your childhood and pass it on. And that's been always my personal goal of what I do, is that I'm remembering things I did, I remember things I wanted to try, I remember the adventures, I remember things that friends, you know, got into and stuff like that. And I'm going to represent those through a view of either your best friend is a superhero or you've got a group of friends that are like Goonies adventures or things like that. And those are the things of reminding us of what's familiar.
I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to let you guys answer some questions. When you were a kid, what was your favorite non-targeted toward children piece of entertainment that you found like super inspiring even now? That wasn't like targeted toward kids, but you think about it like Jurassic Park and the raptors in the bathroom, but it still influences like everything that you do, kind of.
I spent most of my time thinking about Back to the Future. That's kind of an all-ages movie, but not really, because they swear, and there's this cut scene where Marty's really homophobic.
Yeah,
Like he's worried that if he sleeps with his mom, he'll grow up to be gay. And I'm pretty
for
sure...
the best that was cut.
Yeah, no, it's so out of tone with the rest of the film. But that was, I mean, I think it's rated PG-13.
Yeah. No, it's PG, because remember
Really?
they didn't have PG-13 in them days.
Right, but Biff says some swears.
Yeah, he does,
And
but
Marty
that
says
lots
some
of
swears.
people said swears in
Yeah,
the
80s
80s.
kids
It wasn't
kids
until
said all the
Temple of
swears.
Doom
Yeah, Temple of Doom was the first PG-13.
that got it.
Otherwise, PG was just kind of this nebulous place.
Yeah.
You could say many swears, but maybe nobody takes off their clothes.
But I was also big into Star Trek, and that's meant
Yeah.
for, it's not marketed towards kids. But if you are a kid who likes spaceships, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And there's a robot who lives on the bridge. It's amazing. It's so good. Well, an android, but that distinction becomes clearer as you get older and you see things you didn't see before in the text.
I started watching Buffy when I was 9, because I'm a child, and it was definitely too old for me at the time. I was a 9-year-old kid, and or like 8 or 9, like I don't remember when it came out, but I remember I was totally too young to watch it, and it was an iffy topic. And the episode with the gentleman, I didn't sleep for like 3 days. It's terrified in my mind. And I loved it so much, and it is a completely formative thing for me, and I talk about it on like probably every panel I've ever done. I'm like, you know what, Buffy.
Flippin' Buffy.
I like even now I read and love so much stuff that is almost all ages. Like one of my favorite movies in the world is Coraline,
God,
because
Coraline's so good.
My favorite thing about it is it's not afraid to scare you.
Yeah.
And
that
I think,
and Paranorman, if you guys haven't seen them,
Paranorman
they're
is so good. Like everything
extraordinary.
Leica Studios makes is incredible.
Yeah.
And so I love those things because I think a lot of the time stuff you see on like Disney Channel and things like that, I mean, not, to point them out, but a lot of kids programs everything is so dumbed down and all of the corners are rounded. And I love when something that a kid can watch has bite to it and kind of challenges you. So that's stuff that I watch even now and really, really like. So yeah, but that's like kid stuff that I like now. But if I was 9, I would have still really loved it.
For me, I have 3 things. I brought up Warner Brothers cartoons.
Yeah.
I would watch those all the time, and those affected me. That got me in animation, but also I just loved the playfulness and the humor of it. I also listened to Bill Cosby records and tapes because I loved his stories. I loved this. He wasn't just a comedian who had jokes. He would tell stories about being a kid and ridiculous adventures, and that affected me a lot. And then 2 movies are Stand By Me and Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Both affected me for the nostalgic way of telling, but Stand By Me affected me because it was me and my friends. There was a heavier subject that they got into, but it still was. It rode that line of we could have gone on this type of
Just like
adventure.
Babysitter's Club was for me.
Yes, exactly.
I liked monster movies, and I specifically hated the ones that were marketed towards kids. I'd like to watch a monster destroy a city, and then if I was watching one where it was like, Gamera is the friend of all children, I'd turn that off. I wanted the ones where people would look up and go, Gamera will destroy us all, and he would crush things, and I liked that.
I had a comic when I was pretty young. This would have been like the late 70s. Howard the Duck, I think number 27. And in it, Howard the Duck has just finished saving the world, and he's alone in Cleveland at night, and he has insomnia. And he wanders the streets of Cleveland broke. And
How many times have we been there?
Colleen.
How many times has that happened after a
He
con?
takes a job as a repo man temporarily, and he's a duck, and he's drawn by Gene Colan, written by Steve, and I was 8, and it remains one of my favorite comics ever.
What about you, Ben?
I think the Gorillas happened when I was
Oh, yeah.
a lot younger.
Yeah.
Well, not a lot young. I'm not that old. I'm probably the youngest person on this panel. But when I was like a really weird kid. I was afraid that if I heard curse words, that it would be something terrible to me. But the Gorillas were like animated, and I was like, I really like this.
Oh, and Jamie
But like
Hewlett.
I have to find a way to approach this in
good.
like a non-upsetting way to myself. It's just like I think it like really helped me. Like it was really weird. I'm sorry, but like it helped me kind of like I like would like listen to like the next track on the album and then the next one. I was like, this isn't so bad. I'm saying bad words, but that's okay. It's not hurting me in any way. And, it's not hurting my brain or anything, and you know, and then I would like look more into like Jamie Hewitt's other work. I like read a lot of Tank Girl, and like
As
I
a
looked,
teenager, that was a really
I
big
looked
deal.
through like all the because Tank Girl was hard to find at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
It was like had gone to the
I-
point where like nobody remembered Tank Girl anymore, and I was like, but I want to know about.
It's always
all
like
this.
it was like a lot of used bookstores. Is where I
Yeah,
found Tank
yeah.
Girl
And like
was.
when I would find it, it would be like this amazing discovery. But
they have really nice reprinted editions.
yeah,
right
Yeah,
now.
they- beautiful
I've heard,
reprints.
and I know that they have somebody else doing other Tank Girls.
Yeah, Jim Mahfood.
Yeah,
I think he's really
yeah,
good.
he's really good.
He's
But,
perfect for that.
Yeah, he really is.
But
Jim is
yeah.
awesome.
But I think I had like a really weird relationship with that, where like because when I was younger, I didn't necessarily want to see things that were like supposed to be beyond my age group, because I was like really afraid of like just something nebulous but terrible happening to me, and so that kind of like helped me like reach out into the wide world and be like, you know, even if it's not kosher, it's still okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be this like watered down, you say you poop instead of like the S word sort of thing. But I mean, I think I still do a lot of. I don't necessarily want like to watch movies where like people get tortured and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and like
I'm
a
the
whole bunch of
same.
sex scenes happen. I still kind of like that sort of wholesome sort of thing, and I really like adventure stories, and I think, I don't know, I like all ages stuff a lot still.
Me too.
I'm the demographic, I think.
I'm reminded very briefly when I talk about this, and this is short. I was a crazy Archie fiend as a child.
Oh,
as well.
God, me too.
Like I had giant Tupperware bins full of Archie, and I remember specifically, and I don't know who did it, but there was one story that was like way larger than normal Archie stories, because they're normally like 6 pages. It was like half this double digest. That was a story about Jughead and his first love, and how there was this girl that he had like grown up next to, and he'd like completely fallen in love with her, and then when she moved away, he sort of vowed never to date anybody ever again, and it kind of like explained why Jughead was always alone and not after girls the same way Archie was, and it was this really long love story, and it's because it's leading up to the fact that she's coming back to Riverdale to visit, and they kind of have this really nice quiet moment of like, this, you know, this isn't what it is anymore, but he's just sort of like, yeah, there's never going to be anybody but you, and it's in this Archie, and then you flip the page and it's like, Mr. Weatherby's real mad. And I just remember reading it, and like I still remember that story, and I must have read it when I was 7 or 8, and I still remember it so clearly. So I always want to be that Jughead story.
Do they do a thing in like a flashback where she's leaving and she's like, "Don't be sad when you feel like you miss me, just eat a burger"?
Yeah.
It's explaining
Totally
so much.
retrofitting all of
Yeah,
the good
ties.
personalities.
We're just deconstructing Jughead in this story.
Just never open your eyes again.
That's right.
Yeah.
It'll hide the tears.
Keep this hat. Remember me with this
Yes,
hat.
exactly.
There was
It might get
something like
raggedy
that
with
in
points
it,
on the
yeah.
top,
Yes,
but
but always wear it in honor of me.
this kid Archie needs a friend. You can be that friend for him, for me, for me.
All right, guys. Well, if you have any questions, we have looks like about 10 minutes, 15 minutes left. So if you guys have any questions, please. We're all friends here now.
There's a
Now you know a lot of our picadillos, so let's get crazy.
Somebody step up.
Go to
Yeah.
the microphone.
It can be ridiculous. Don't worry.
Free Colleen Coover bandette drawing for the first question.
Whoa.
The question, free drawing.
Really?
Just shout it
yes,
out.
go
You
for
can,
it.
you can shout it from there.
Lead the
You don't have.
charge.
Yeah.
I want to say real quick first that I had a lot of fun a couple years ago in working out that my 2 favorite comic books I was collecting at the time came out at the same week. And I always enjoyed the look on the person's face at the comic book store that I was buying American Vampire, which is for mature readers, like and Darkwing Duck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of you from KaBOOM, and I think it was Boom.
Boom Kids at the time,
And I was like,
Darkwing
these are
Duck.
my favorite two books right now. But I was actually curious, do you see, Shannon, especially, I don't know if you know, if there are all ages books doing well in digital sales, and is there a difference between how sort of more adult comics are selling in digital versus online?
It's a really interesting question, actually. I think about that a lot because of the way that we used to get comics at the drugstore, or in the mass. That kind of market for floppies in the mass is not necessarily available anymore. And so, for anybody in the back, the question was essentially, what is the difference in sales between digital and hard copies for all ages books, and what contributes to that, et cetera. And I think about that a lot. Our digital sales, honestly, are not they grow every year, but they're not necessarily blowing barn doors off. But we do have, I do find that we get a lot of people saying that their kids love reading comics on the iPad. It's very intuitive for them, and but it's a concern of mine because I worry that kids whose parents don't go to the comic shop aren't going to be able to find our comics. I mean, the reason that I read Archie, the reason that you read Archie was because your mom goes to the grocery store and there's Archie right there.
Yeah, and when you're going through the checkout, that's your okay. You
It's
didn't
your treat for
break
being good.
anything. Yeah,
For
You
being
get an
good
Archie.
while your mom's shopping. Is you get your $1.99 Archie digest. Librarians have been just the holiest godsend in kids comics. Kids comics are really all ages comics are really catching on in libraries in a really big way. Because, hey, everybody loves comics. Comics are the best. So we're seeing a lot of that, kids are finding comics through their local libraries in a really big way. But yeah, it's interesting because it's about level as far as our all ages comics and other comics. And I wonder, as kind of digital becomes more and more prevalent, how kids are gonna kind of find comics in this kind of digital world. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, but yes.
So, I know that Boom distributes to comic shops and also general bookstores,
Yes.
but it's very complicated for bookstores to get floppy.
Oh, yes.
Have you guys considered doing something what in say bookstores we call them 8x8 picture backs?
Mhm.
They're usually movie themes, but it's a very cheap,
Yeah.
shorter book, and that's kind of like the grocery store pickup.
Yeah.
About converting some of your comics to that format so that bookstores can have a better.
Yeah, it's actually, it's another interesting question for those of you who didn't hear. It's harder. There's two different comics markets, essentially. The direct market, which is comic book stores, floppy comics. It's usually through Diamond Comics distributors. And the mass market, which is bookstores and, Walmart, et cetera. And she was asking if there was, if we can ever considered an easier format for shelving, an 8x8. And actually, we did our Ice Age books. We did our Ice Age comics as 8x8s. And it's really interesting. The biggest hurdle with that is that it severely limits the audience because it is then shelved with essentially, books that are really super kiddo. The Berenstein Bears kind of, 8x8 format books. And so, people don't know necessarily, what we found was a lot of bookstores didn't know where to put stuff. They would essentially get this comic that was an 8x8, and so they'd file it with the children's books, and then, there was a lot of words, and usually those 8x8s generally are for younger readers.
I remember when Mouse came out, I used to find it in the humor section.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really interesting, but if they filed it with comics, the feedback that we got was that it looked too young for people who were buying comics. And so it's a really interesting, I don't know, it's an interesting challenge, getting comics into the hands of kids. because I just want all of the kids to read all of the things all the time. But it's an interesting thing. I don't know. We've kind of tried to adjust our format so that it is able to reach the widest situation possible. And I just don't know. I don't know how the floppy market is going to change as far as the mass goes.
We'll just
only-
add swear words to the covers, and then it can really go.
Then it can
anywhere.
really go wild. But yeah, the only companies that really have a good mass program for their floppies still is essentially what you might call the big three, which is it's DC, Marvel, and then Archie. Archie has an incredible presence in the mass. They have an incredible deal that I'm jealous of all the time. So, any other questions? Yes.
So, what is the most insightful thing a child has said to you? And if not that, then interesting or funny?
That's really awesome. That's an awesome question. Panelists, so for those of you watching at home, the question was, what was the funniest or most insightful thing that a child has said to us? Well, in the business of all ages comics.
Like, I'm not sure this is like humorous or insightful, but like part of my love of doing like the all ages, twice when I was working on Marvel Adventures at Marvel, I had fathers send me photos of their young boys in both cases holding a comic, and it was they'd said this is literally the first comic that they had ever read, and that was so charming that not only know that that was true, but that they reached out to me and were like, it was like this sharing moment and it really made me feel good about doing all ages, because it's like, because I can remember being that 4 or 5 year old kid, usually with a couple of Hostess products and a can of Coke, sitting down by the river and seeing who the Hulk's punching, and and so it was like really charming, and it was almost like reverse insightful, because it was like, oh yeah, that's right, this is why I do this.
Yeah, I had, there was a thing that was going around on the internet,
Oh,
famous
God.
because Ryan North reblogged it.
Yeah. I wept.
I can't take all of it.
No, there was somebody made a comic. It was a guy who was working in a comic book store, and a little girl came in and was interested in Adventure Time. And this guy had followed my blog, and so had read the Adventure Time book and was a fan of my stuff. And so he recommended to this little girl the Marceline book. And when the little girl found out it was written by a girl, she got really excited. And so this guy made a comic about that experience. It's so meta. So he makes a comic about this happening, and wrote a thing about how important it is to see stuff like that. And it was so wonderful. And the thing just spread like wildfire all over the internet, and people commenting on it. It was really nice because it's so. I mean, comics news is not always the most positive thing in the world, and it was so nice to see people just being like, "Oh gosh, comics are great."
Sometimes comics are great.
And even because it happens sometimes when I'll be signing, and this is so new to me because this is my first big book, and being at shops when little girls will come up and they're so excited, and I'm like, oh, I wrote this Adventure Time book, and their eyes get so wide, they're like, you did? And their mom's like, yeah, she wrote it, and the kids are so excited. And even this weekend with Lumberjanes, the little girls coming up to the table, and I'm like, this is a comic about 5 best friends who are girls, and the whole creative team are girls. And the kids just, their brains explode because, and I'm like, and you can read it, and your mom can read it, and your friends can read it, and there's monsters and best friends and camp.
And it's the best.
And it's everyone involved is a lady, which is so cool. And
It's really important.
I can't even imagine what that would have meant to me when I was younger, because one of the first comics I got into when I got into more books of comics rather than just Archie was called Alice and Dare that Jay Bone did, that was an awesome little girl Indiana Jones. And I remember having that experience of oh, she's a girl in a comic.
This is awesome.
So any experience like that just is the coolest thing in the world.
All right, guys, I think we got to wrap it up pretty soon. Right? We're good? All right, cool. Thank you guys so much. I hope that we entertained you and you enjoyed your time with us. If you'd like to talk to us more, we're either going to be at the Boom booth, Topatico booth, or booth number 1214 for Colleen and Paul. We would love to see you guys and talk to you a little more. So we love you. Thank you for reading
guys.
our comics.
Thank you. Thank you.
gonna say, this is the wrong side. I have a harder time jumping these days. Because of my stupid ankle.
Test, test.
6 is working just fine.
Sound check, test. Test, test. Test, test.
Oh, we need to turn 2 up.
Test, test.
Yeah, 2 is really quiet.
Test,
Okay, that's better.
test. Test. Test.